Welcome to the Haunted Hangover podcast. I'm Louie, and I'm joined by Grimey.
What's up, y'all?
I don't know why I had to say your name all sexy.
It's pretty hot. I'm here for it.
It's because of the movie we're covering, the movie we're talking about.
It is, yeah. It's slightly sexier than the other version. You're right.
A little sexier. The dent the dent we're putting into this Universal Monsters coverage, the massive dent. 2 films in.
2 films out of like what, 50?
Something like
so many.
that. Yes, quite a little gap there between the last time we did this, but we're back. We're back and better than ever. It's a new year, feeling fresh. Got some new equipment here. I got a new mic. You've got a new robotic arm connected to your mic here.
Yeah, I got this new cyborg arm that's holding a mic in front of my face, and it does well. It's nice. I like it.
Welcome to the club. I also have the cyborg arm. You can't see mine, though. It's usually out of frame, unfortunately. The Terminator Cyberdyne, whatever the hell it is, exoskeleton arm holding the mic. But
yeah,
yes,
I haven't quite figured out where to put mine exactly, so it'll make do for here right now. So
it takes time figuring out where to stick it. It's on my desk. It's literally bolted down. I don't think I've moved it at all in a few years. So there you go. That's what this episode's really about. Arms holding your mic. Yeah, that's basically it. Welcome to the Haunted Hangover podcast, the podcast behind the scenes on creating a podcast. No, that's not what we're talking about.
What are we talking about?
Dracula. Again.
Did we already talk about this?
That's what I thought. I thought we already covered this movie. But no. Upon doing some research, and most people, when they do a chronological, I'm probably not saying that word right, the order of which Universal Monster movies are put in, the Dracula Spanish language version is always on that list as the second film from a few that I've seen. It counts as a separate Universal Monsters movie, technically. Would you agree, Grimey? Seeing you saw some of the list I saw, would you consider this a separate entity from the original Dracula?
At first, upon hearing about it, I would say no. Mm-hmm. But now that I've watched it and I've got to let this all sink in, yeah, totally. I think it has its place for sure. I think it's strange that this is how they used to do it back then, but I'm assuming this is. We'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah. It's weird because when you watch, when you think of Universal Monsters, I think you don't ever none of this ever comes to mind. Like, is there another version of these movies? Like, even growing up, I did not know there was a Spanish language version until maybe like 10 years ago. And for good reason, because when you do some research into this film, it was lost for a while.
Right,
which is kind of crazy
that
it didn't exist. Like, it was released out of commission until the 70s, which is still a long time considering the release date of this movie. And then even still, and this is a good segue into how Grimey had to watch this movie. But even today, finding this movie, unless you own a physical copy of it on either DVD, VHS, or good old Blu-ray, it's kind of hard to watch. It's not really streaming anywhere. Now, it was streaming not this past Halloween, the year previous on Peacock. They did have, I believe it was Peacock or Tubi, one of the two, had both the original Dracula, English language version, and the Spanish version. Now, when we decided to do our Universal Monsters journey, I was like, Grimey, because I own the Blu-ray box set, which I think I mentioned in the English Dracula.
Yeah.
It's on that Blu-ray. It doesn't have its own disc. It's a special feature on the Blu-ray of Dracula.
That makes sense.
Yes. So it's not even like when you look at the box set, it doesn't have its own Blu-ray or anything like that. It's just a special feature. Oh. Yeah, really weird.
Weird, man.
And considering that, when you look it up, most people kind of treat it as a separate entity from the 1931 film, the original English version 1931 film. This was also released in 1931. Spoiler alert. But yeah, so, when you look it up and you go on eBay and stuff, there were I pulled up my VHS of Dracula in the last episode from the 90s. That same series, I don't unfortunately own the Spanish language version. They released a separate VHS of it as well.
Oh, no shit.
That got its own release in that series, which is why I think people kind of keep it separate from the original. And even streaming now, when you go on Tubi and you go on Peacock, the English Dracula, Bela Lugosi Dracula, is pretty easy to find. This one,
yeah,
nearly impossible. Mm-hmm. Now, we're not gonna go. I'm against pirating. I do not. I don't like pirating films and things like that because I guess the filmmaker in me kind of is against that.
Oh yeah, support the artist. Come on.
Exactly. Unfortunately, Grimey, you couldn't even rent this on YouTube.
No, none of the streaming services.
Amazon, no one has it.
No, super weird, man. What did you send me? What was that?
So, what I found was on, I believe it's the Internet Archive.
Archives, yeah.
They have, it's kind of like a playlist with the original English language version, a bunch of like TV spots, radio spots, and the commercials, trailers, and the Spanish language version. But unfortunately, and I don't think Grimey brushed up on his Spanish before he watched it, there were no English subtitles in this.
No. I tried picking up everything I could. There was a lot of Buenos noches, a lot of gracias, senor. Yeah, yes. Yeah. I could hear him say like Van Helsing and people's names. The basic stuff. Vino when he's drinking the wine. Vino. Yes. Yeah, got that one.
Everyone loves some good vino.
Yeah.
I do think it's hilarious that you watched this in Spanish without subtitles.
Ironically, it wasn't that bad though, because after watching, we recorded the first episode back in before Halloween.
Yeah.
Even so, I still remember, I've watched that movie, briefly a couple of times and caught bits and pieces of it. If you've watched that one before, you won't have that much of a hard time figuring out what's going on in this movie. It's pretty easygoing. I liked it, honestly. I did. I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to like it. I was like, well, this is going to be just the same exact thing. And to an extent it is, but you're going to find out here in a few minutes, what's good, what's better, what's worse, yada, yada.
It's funny, too, because I remember we were texting back and forth, and you were like, dude, I have no idea what's going on, but I get a gist of what and it's true. It's true when you watch it, and listen, I'm Hispanic, but I would not say I'm fluent in Spanish. I'm not.
I was going to ask, but no, I wasn't sure.
I was born here. I was born in New York, so we don't count. We don't
we're not really.
Honestly, and this is pretty funny. So being Puerto Rican from New York and being from people from Puerto Rico think people born here are they're not real Puerto Ricans. They're American.
They judge you.
Yeah, it's you're not.
Fucking
you don't,
assholes.
Again, you don't count. I'm being honest.
The Puerto Rican purists. Fuck out of here.
So if you're not from the island, you're not Puerto Rican. So and there's a lot of, there's not as many Puerto Ricans in New York, but there were a lot of Puerto Ricans here. So at one point there was a lot of people coming from here and having kids here. And that's how I ended up here. So and it was funny enough, my parents too were both born here too. So my mom, I know going on Louis' history here, but my mom was born there, but she came here when she was 1. So,
that's
still born and raised in New York. So, again, I don't know Spanish that well. So when I was watching this, I understood. I'd say this. I understood about 50% of what they were saying. If
50%.
If I turned the subtitles off, I would have understood what they were saying for the most part. There's some large words, bigger words I don't understand.
Oh,
and then
that beats the shit out of my 2%. So
maybe you knew more more words than me, Grimey. That would have been amazing.
No, I doubt.
Vino, senor, bueno. You would have been go. Do you feel like you learned a little Spanish watching this movie?
No.
All right. It's fair.
If they would have used numbers, I could have counted all over these motherfuckers. I'm good with numbers in Spanish. That's pretty much it, though. Well, at least up to 10. I don't know.
Yeah.
Past 10's kind of hard.
Funny enough,
But
I don't
anyway.
even think I know past 10 much. So there you go. You're not
Fuck is
alone.
weird.
You're not alone in that. Again, my Spanish is not fantastic. It's very broken. But hey, whatever. Still proud. But yes.
Anyhow.
Anyhow.
One of
moving
my
on.
burning questions, and I
Yeah.
did a little bit of digging, but I want to hear from you. What exactly, what was the deal here? Why was it necessary to shoot 2 films, man?
So I looked this up, and I didn't know this was a thing, because if you think about it, you know, and we'll get into the kind of logistics of when this was released and stuff in a second, but kind of the backstory behind it. By the way, before we get into the backstory, we're not breaking down the plot of this movie. Go back and listen to our Dracula episode,
Yes,
because
please do.
verbatim, it is the same exact plot. So on a rare occasion here on the Haunted Hangover podcast, skipping the plot of this movie, it would be redundant.
Yeah. Oh,
Right,
also,
Grimey?
yes, certainly. And before we get into it, I'd just like to say that I listened to that episode just the other day in preparation for this episode. I sound kind of like a big complaining bitch on that one. I actually really do like the first like the Dracula movie. It's really good. I do enjoy it. I nitpicked a lot about it, but because that's the kind of person I am, I like to complain. So, don't take any offense to it. It is a good movie. You should watch it.
Listen, man, film's subjective. You can
It is.
you can nitpick, Grimey. There is nothing wrong with that. That's
I did.
There wouldn't be a show if we didn't nitpick, man. Come on. So,
Right.
Exactly. Think of it that way. But yeah, so reading about, and I thought this was really interesting. So Hollywood, because you know this is like the golden age of Hollywood and what
Yeah.
people think of filmmaking in the
Classics.
20s and 30s. Exactly, the classics. Hollywood thought it would be a smart idea to shoot movies and then use all the assets, so sets, costuming, the crew, everything, and use them to basically copy the movie in another language, which I believe I saw was Germany and Spanish-speaking countries. It seems like those were the 2 countries that they mostly were trying to cater towards and get an audience. And they'd make these movies in a way that I guess, make it worthwhile and make it worth the budget and money they're spending. Because if you think about it, if you've got all this standing, you might as well use it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And I guess that was their frame of thought, was like, all right, these producers, we've got all this done. We've got all this already here. When the American speaking or English speaking actors are here and they're done, we can just swap over and bring another crew, another group of people to film the same movie. Yeah. And all they really had to do was rewrite the English script in Spanish and translate it. Yeah. And I just think overall, I don't even think this is done anymore, which I think is even more a product of the time, where I think movies are just like, imagine if they shot The Avengers. And then, you know what? Let's recast everyone and make like a Chinese version of it.
Chinese one? Yeah, totally.
And like it would be, you know, with lesser known actors. It'd be kind of crazy because so much money is put into film now, where logistically I don't think it'd be possible.
No, not at all.
I think in this point in history, film was still very much in its infancy. So it was movies were almost like filmed plays, stage plays.
Yeah.
They very much feel like that when you watch these old movies. Would you agree?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I absolutely agree. So, did you know if they did this with any of the other movies? Did they ever have any other versions of each of these other movies? Or no?
I don't think so. Like I think they chose certain films they thought this was Universal. Obviously, were involved in making Dracula and this production of Dracula. It was their idea to create this movie and just make a Spanish-speaking version of it instead of, because I think at this point there was no dubbing of movies. Think about it.
Right.
You know, now you just dub a film and you can play it in any country can get their version of a film, which is why I think this is kind of a dead art. You know, you don't see this anymore. But as far to my knowledge, when I was doing a little research, I did not see any of like a Frankenstein Spanish speaking I didn't see it, at least. I didn't. No. It didn't come up. Or if it was made, maybe it's lost media now. Because this was lost media, like I said before, for a long time. So,
yeah, I was looking up the date that they actually ended up kind of starting to distribute it. And that really blew my mind. I was like, it took that long to find this, piece it together, and then distribute
78,
it? Like,
I think, right? 77, 78. It was late 70s,
was it that?
right?
Really? I got
think
that
so.
it was restored and then distributed in like 1992 or something like that.
So I think I think they found a print of it in New Jersey, funny enough.
Okay.
In the 70s. And then it wasn't distributed to the masses on, I think, home video until the early 90s.
Holy shit. That's so long, man.
The VHS,
Crazy.
the VHS I mentioned. Remember I told you I don't own it, unfortunately, but that VHS I think was one of the first. That's why it's had a resurgence in the last 30, 40 years because people, found out about it much later on in history. Yeah. I think it is cool. It's almost like another universe's version. It's like if they shot Dracula with Bela Lugosi and then it's just like, what if we flipped everything and it's this whole other... it is kind of freaky when you think about it, like just seeing the two movies lined up. And there are some drastic differences in not drastic, but
not too drastic, but
different slight differences in the way they tell the story. And I think the biggest thing to me in this movie, the performances. The performances is really,
and like just the angles that they shot the movie, different camera tricks and stuff like that. Yeah, it's definitely, but yeah, for sure, the performances is really what sets this movie apart from the former, and it's kind of wild. Like I was kind of surprised it's not like, a copy and paste. And on top of that, they added like 20, 30 minutes to this movie?
Oh, dude.
Right?
This movie is so the original Dracula
was like 70
an
minutes.
hour and 14 minutes. This is an hour and 43 minutes.
Yeah.
So
quite a bit, that's not anything to sneeze at. That's quite a bit of time.
And if you think about it, they utilized the sets more in the Spanish-speaking version than the American version. Like there's more, the scenes are stretched out longer.
Yeah.
In the Spanish language version. But let's get into some of the logistics of 1931's Dracula, the Spanish language version.
Soy Drácula. No podía usted ser más oportuno. No sé lo que pasaría con el cochero y con mi equipaje. Con todas esas cosas, creí que me había equivocado de casa. Los muros de mi castillo están cuarteados. Abundan en él las sombras. Pero suba. Está usted en su casa.
This was directed by George Melford. You know what I learned, which I thought was really interesting too about this director, George Melford? My man didn't even speak Spanish.
I did see that. I was like, wait a minute.
Yes.
Had an interpreter to help him out with it.
He had to have an interpreter to help him with the actors. So imagine, you're as a guy who's done directed stuff, I can't imagine being on. I feel like that would take forever to shoot anything. You're on set.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You're talking to your interpreter, and they're talking to the actors, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So you've got this middleman that's helping you out, just kind of getting blocking and the way scenes are structured and everything. I can't imagine the headache that must have been.
I get nervous just thinking about it. I couldn't imagine going to a different place. I can't speak any other language. I could barely speak English. Going, let's say China or something, and having an interpreter there, that whole entire process makes me sketched out. I just don't like the idea of it. And knowing that this dude was just I'm going to make this movie, I guess, and had to have this in between. Poor guy.
Yeah, I just, when I read that, I was like, wow, because there was even, on the Blu-ray, there's an introduction with one of the actresses, which we're going to get into, and she talked, she spoke English in the intro. I think this was from the 90s when they released the film originally. And she spoke about how he didn't speak Spanish, and they would have to just have full conversations through an interpreter. Yeah. So it's just the overall kind of process to me is boggling, because I don't think that's something that happens nowadays either, where there's directors that have to use an interpreter. I'm sure it's happened. I'm actually listening to a book about the making of the Chucky movies, and I'm up to the Bride of Chucky chapter. And
Nice.
Ronnie Yu directed that movie, and his English wasn't well. So it wasn't that good. So I'm sure he had to have someone on set probably help him. And this was 1998. So imagine much, much further down the line. So I just, just the language barrier between actor and director, that just sounds crazy to me.
Yeah.
So this has 2 release dates. One is April 24th, 1931 in New York, funny enough. New York City was where it premiered. And then in Havana a month earlier on March 1st, 1931. So weird how it premiered technically in Havana, and then it had its New York, United States premiere in April, a month later. And now here's where we're going to get into the actors. So no Bela Lugosi this time. And I'm not even going to lie. Man. Not even going to lie. Missed them a little bit in this movie, but
yeah, I could see it. I could completely understand.
We've got Carlos, and I think this is how you pronounce the last name, Villarius. Villarius.
Oh, is that it?
Villarius, I believe.
We're gonna go with Carlo V.
Carlos V. Carlos Villarius as Count Dracula. Or we've got Lupita Tovar as Eva, who is actually Mina. They changed the character's name in the Spanish-speaking version. So there's no Mina in this. It's Eva is the love interest.
Yeah, I was wondering what the hell they were saying. I was like, are they saying Eva or is it Mina?
No, it's Eva or Eva. They for some reason, I think it's just a cultural thing. I guess gotcha. Mina isn't something that's used in, as a name in Spanish cultures. So Eva is. So I guess that's why they changed it. You got Barry Norton as Juan. So we got a Juan in it, real Latino. Juan Harker, who's the boyfriend. I forget the character's name in the original English-speaking version, but it's Mina's fiance boyfriend. In this, his name is Juan.
Love interest.
Yeah, the love interest. Yeah. One of the heroes of the movie. And you've got Pablo Alvarez Rubio as Renfield. And Eduardo, once again, Arazamena as Van Helsing. So everyone's got 3 names here almost. But everyone's got a much longer,
very elaborate names.
Very elaborate names for these actors. And I do like how they changed. I do like how they changed some characters, but kept some, like Renfield. I just love how he's still Renfield. Like they kept that as and even like the whole like. It's funny because the entire time I was watching the movie, I was like, I just kept saying Senor Renfield because that's what Dracula kept calling him, Senor Renfield.
Senor Renfield.
So I did enjoy that and get a good laugh that he was just Senor Renfield in this movie. Mm-hmm. Now, to go into the performances, I think this is a good place to start since we're skipping plot. I want to start with positives. Not getting negative. I don't want to get negative.
Yeah, we'll start with the happy.
Let's I'm curious if you agree with me in the way you interpreted some of these performances. And this is in my notes. One of the first things I noticed about this movie was Eva, Lupita Tovar. I feel that this, and I'm going to say Mina because that's technically what the character Mina, Eva, Mina. The character of Mina / Eva is so much better in this version. Would you agree, Grimey?
Yeah. She's for the most part one of the I guess the best example of what's better in this film is this one. Like, and the other one, I feel like she's just kind of dry. There's not really a lot going on with her character. No. This one, there's just so much more of like I don't want to say character development, but like, yeah, she just has better character in this one for sure.
You know where you notice it mostly, and where you notice the difference between the Mina and Eva character between the 2 versions? In this version, her transformation from when Dracula bites her to her kind of going insane, it it feels a little more flawless. The transition is a little smoother going.
Yeah,
like there's
a little
that
more
one,
authentic.
A little more authentic. The performance just overall is better. There's that one scene where in this version it's Juan and Eva are on the balcony, and he's telling her he loves her, he wants what's best for her, and she tries to bite him. You know what scene I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
And she kind of starts to go mad a little bit and high energy, and she's kind of going insane. And right there is where you could see the kind of timid, quiet girl get all animalistic towards the end, which is what you want from a vampire movie. And I feel like the performance kind of shows that more, whereas Mina in the original movie was kind of more of a damsel in distress. She doesn't feel like
it's
a
more
damsel.
like, I'm just getting kind of sick. I didn't hide my neck a little bit.
Yeah.
And this one you see here, like you said, it's more of like an animalistic kind of turn, and it does feel a lot more natural.
Drácula vino. Se abrió una vena del brazo y me hizo beber.
She's more kind of subdued in the sense of, you know, especially in that scene where you really notice it. She almost gets animated in the way Renfield is by like Dwight Fry's Renfield in the original, where not for the entire movie, because that entire performance is cartoony, and we both
super
loved it.
over the top.
Yeah, but it's great. He's one of the highlights. We said it in our previous episode, but in that one moment, because that's the point. Once Dracula gets a hold of you, you kind of become this wild animal.
Yeah,
and you see it in that scene, whereas you don't see that in the English version. She kind of just tries to bite him, and then she's like, "Oh my God, what am I doing?" And in this, it's like a performance.
Yeah.
And I just thought she's probably the highlight of this, in my opinion, of the Spanish version. I think she's probably the best performance throughout the entire film.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And another thing when it comes to, mentioning that too, the character of Lucy, I feel takes a hit in this version.
Yeah.
Because of Eva.
Yeah.
So like Lucy kind of is like, and she's not prominent in the original English Dracula, but in this I feel she's even takes
less.
even less. She takes a backseat even more. Whereas like she's there and then she's not there. Dracula kills her and it's a wrap for Lucy. Or Luce, I think in this version. She has an accent in her name. And I did find that, I noticed it right away when watching them, because I watched the American version right after. I put it on again just because, just to see it. I was like, wow, it stands out. You can see the difference. If you line these performances up, I think most people would agree that Eva is better than Mina. Sorry, Mina. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just
totally.
Eva's. Lupita Tovar, just her as an actor, I think she was a better actress when compared to the actor from that played Mina. Another funny thing I learned, dude, this woman lived to be 106 years old.
106. Wow.
She died in 2016.
Jeez.
Yes.
Wow, that's so long, man.
Yo, dude, I was reading about her a little bit. She was a Lupita Tovar. She was a Mexican actress, and she was the last living person from that era of film.
Wow.
And she
Poor
lived
girl.
to be 106 years. What a run that was.
Too long. Too long.
That's a run. Dude, she had a run. 100 and she died in 2016.
It's crazy. Well, I mean, she was bit by fucking Dracula, man.
Yo, that Dracula vamp. Yo, dude, it's crazy.
Are you sure she died, or did she just get staked in the heart?
Maybe it was just a staking that happened. But isn't that crazy, dude?
That is insane, man.
Isn't that
now,
crazy?
I mean, yeah, it's 106. I don't know. I might not to go too off topic, but my grandmother's in the hospital now, and she's like, she's old. She's like 96 years old. Well, she was in the same room with someone who just passed away. She was 99. I was like, wow, that's a long time, man. But 106, holy shit.
106 years old, dude. And it's what's insane to me is that this woman, this actress, saw so much in that time.
Yeah, that's
she
a
was
lot.
she literally was in the first, like one of the first big Universal monster movies, and lived long enough to see the crappy like Draculas like that have. Even though Gary Oldman played a good Dracula much later on, but in the '90s. But she was, dude. That I read that, I was like, wow, that is wild. That
Do you think she watched it?
Maybe. Like
She was just
I
like,
don't know.
eh.
106 years old, dudes. That's impressive that this lady lived this actor lived that long. That she was able to kind of see the resurgence of her own film that she was in.
It's insane.
Like, when you think about it, most people talk about the Spanish version of Dracula now when they talk about the American version. So it's like she lived long enough to see it get lost and come back around. Crazy.
Yeah. Wild,
especially
dude.
when you look at like the lifespans of some of these other actors. Back in the day, people were heavy smokers and heavy drinkers and all kinds of not taking care of themselves. Wild. This actor, Lupita Tovar, lived so long. Just wanted to highlight that because I thought that was crazy when I read it. So
That is crazy, dude. I didn't know that.
another thing, since we're talking about the female actors in this movie, something else you'll notice, and I even texted this to you when we were talking about covering this, that the movie's a little sexier. That's why
It's a little more risque.
That's why I mentioned the sexiness in the beginning when I said your name into the mic here, because a lot of the female, like specifically Lucy and Eva, they're like nightgowns, lingerie, their dresses are a little more low cut.
Yeah, I had heard that this was supposed to be like the sexier version, and I was like, well, how much worse can it be exactly? I'm curious. Like, not that the original Dracula isn't like. It's not. It doesn't have any nudity or anything like that in it. So I was like, well, I wonder what they do. What's the big thing? Is there like a nipple slip or like what? What is it? And it really is just like lower cut. You might see more cleavage here and there, but other than that, it's not like you ain't seeing a bunch of titties everywhere. Unfortunately.
There you go. Unfortunately, there's none of that in this movie. Well, if you think about it, back in the 1930s, I'm sure, censorship was completely there was no censorship, so I guess people were more proper. So when you watch the English language version, all the girls, their dresses and nightgowns like hit their neck. It's like you're not even getting a little bit of skin. In this one, very deep V's. You're getting little cleave action. Nothing, again, like you said, we're not getting like big, giant, like Baywatch cleavage.
If you're not paying attention, you're not really going to notice much.
No.
It's there, but it's not like, hey, look,
And I was Googling why that was. Like, I was so curious. Like, why did the American actors not wear as revealing wardrobe? And the female in the Spanish version, but I couldn't find anything. I'm guessing it's just a cultural thing. That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Where it's like, the American audiences aren't, they're a little more uptight when it comes to nudity and sex.
Maybe Spanish is just a little more comfortable with sexuality.
A little loose over there, wherever, in Spain and in Mexico and in Ecuador, Argentina. Everyone is flaunting it all. Spicy. You got to be spicy, man. Definitely. I'm all about the spice.
Hell yeah. Add some spice to that.
Which speaking of sexy, I don't want to go into cons just yet but we're talking about the actors in this. We're talking about the sexiness and the performance. Let's talk about Carlos Valerias, his performance as Count Dracula. I want to start with you, Grimey. I'm curious. Where do you stand when you compare Bela Lugosi and Carlos Valerias' Count Dracula performance? What did you think? I'm so curious.
Okay. Well, I know we don't want to go too far into cons, but I feel like this one just comes off too comical. Like Carlos is just it's a little on the goofier side, Like it's more like it's campier. It doesn't have this like striking appearance like Belo does, It's completely different. It's strange.
A lot of teeth. If you notice.
Oh, yeah. A lot, yeah.
Every shot of him, whenever he's trying to look intimidating, he's like wide-eyed, and it's like, I'm like,
it's almost like he like tried to mimic what Bela Lugosi was doing, and it kind of just didn't go the way he wanted it to. Like he had like yeah, the eyes for sure, the teeth. And
It was
just
odd,
over the
dude.
top. Yeah.
There's shots of him, right? So when you compare Bela Lugosi and Carlos, when you compare them, right, and you let's say you take an image from a still from both films, and you put them side by side. Bela Lugosi is all stoic, upright,
Oh yeah.
standing there, and I guess that's why he's icon. He's the iconic
Oh
Dracula.
yeah.
We talked
Perfect
about that.
interpretation of Dracula, like expert.
Deadpan, serious. Those shots where they light his eyes, the shots of him with the cape wrapped around in darkness. There is none of that in this performance.
No.
It is literally like it's the opposite of what you think of this version of Dracula. Like even when he does the whole hand thing, it's just there's just something off with it. Now to compliment the guy, I think that when he's serious and he's just exchanging dialogue with like Van Helsing and with the other actors, the other characters, with Eva, it's solid. It doesn't come off as hokey. As soon as he's trying to become menacing, he comes off as like a clown. It's like a clown version of Dracula.
Yeah.
So,
No, it is, man. It is. It's almost like something that a kid could watch and think was funny, kind of. Like, oh, it's goofy. He's just doing goofy faces, and
that's definitely that must have been the direction. That must have been where the interpreter was not delivering the correct information to Carlos that the director was giving him, that George Melford was giving him. Because how do you watch and from what I read, they were watching footage from the English language version and comparing it to, I think while they were shooting, they did see some of what Bela Lugosi was doing in the Count Dracula performance. And the only thing I could think is that they were like, you need to be more sinister. His kind of serious demeanor is not scary, which when you look back at it now, it's like, no, that is he's intimidating in that movie. Carlos is not intimidating in this movie at all.
Not really,
as Count Dracula. And
totally agree.
It's kind of sad. It's kind of sad watching it. I was like, damn, dude, this guy's just not scary. Like I almost wish there was less of him in the movie. When you watch, it's like hold back a little. I'm being honest, dude, because I think
I feel that.
Yeah, Eva and Renfield, which we'll get into next, are they take the performances serious, whereas Carlos, I feel, was just like, I'm a monster, so here's my teeth and my wide-eyed, and like it's a parody of what it almost feels like Leslie Nielsen's Dracula Dead and Loving It, like over the top performance.
It is a lot like that. Super. Wow.
It's a parody great comparison. It's a parody of what Bela Lugosi did, and I'm so curious as to why that is. And when you read about this movie and you read reviews, it's pretty much universally agreed upon that he is the weakest part of this movie.
Yeah. I mean, I read a lot of mixed reviews, but that is like the majority of them say, like, this dude, it's just too comical, too clowny, and it kind of like threw the film a little bit lower than what they were hoping, I think. But
it hinders it for sure. It hinders it when you watch, especially when you watch both back to back. It's like, not on par with what we expected. Especially if you watch this one afterwards, you're going to be disappointed by his take of Dracula.
Maestro! Maestro! No les iba a decir nada! No les he dicho nada!
Renfield.
Anyways, Renfield for sure. Oh my God.
What did you think of this performance of Renfield?
Now, going into this, I already knew that this guy had some pretty big shoes to fill.
Yes.
All right. So, because Renfield from the English version just fucking killed it. It was awesome. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it was super comical too, but it was like comical and maniacal to the point where it was like you would kind of think it was goofy at first, but the more he leaned into that character, you were like, oh, this is kind of creepy. And in this, it was less comical, I guess, and more serious, like. And the way he screamed too was like a little more violent. I feel like it was just like more believable, I guess. Like Renfield played the kind of goofy but yet maniacal version of insane, and this guy was just like, this was like dark kind of insanity. It was good. I really liked his interpretation of the character.
It's almost like the actor, and his name, again, I'll repeat it, Pablo Alvarez Rubio, took what Dwight Fry did in the original, and it's like what like with Dracula, comparing the Draculas, he flipped it. He's like, all right, I'm not going to play it as animated and cartoony. I'm going to act the shit out of this movie. So,
and I'm glad that that's like exactly where we fell with it, because that was what I had in my notes. It's like, it feels kind of like, Dracula and Renfield switched in this movie. Like, it's completely flopped. Like, one is comical kind of in the other one, and now they just flip-flopped their roles or something. It's really strange, but yeah, that's exactly how I feel.
It's kind of crazy, even when you think about it. Like, I almost feel like this Pablo Alvarez guy, he should have played Dracula. Even
totally,
right?
Man. I think that would have been a really good idea.
Even his look, he had the long hair falling to the side. He was thin. He decent height on him. I was like, wow, this dude should have just been the Count. He would have done.
Yeah.
He was more like that one scene, in the English language version when he's warning them. And it's a great scene, too, how Dwight Fry goes from crazy to human again, snaps out of both performances. In this one, it's almost a tortured soul when he's warning them, like, look, she's in danger. You're all going to die, blah, blah, blah. There is no crazy Renfield, human Renfield. They're kind of combined.
Yeah.
There's no turning it on and off. And I do like that. There's more. It's subtle. It is weird how they were flipped. The Dracula and Renfield character were basically flipped in this movie when it comes to the performances. I thought he was great, dude. And even with the comedy, there was still a little bit of comedy with the orderlies and the bending of the bars.
Yeah.
I'm glad they kept that one scene in where the one orderly is telling the other woman, like, oh, everyone here is crazy. I think you and I are the only two sane ones.
Yeah.
I sometimes think you're still crazy, though. And I still like how they kept that intact. I even think that orderly is more memorable than in the English version. The one dude that played the guy that kept grabbing Renfield. He has like really slicked hair, too. It's like nicely sculpted in all of his scenes. Crazy. It is crazy to think that. I think everyone in this movie is acting scenes out better, except for Dracula.
Totally.
Except for Dracula. That's really rare.
Would you say you like his version of Renfield more than Fry's? That's my burning question. Because, like I said, I read a lot of reviews about this, and the majority of people will say, like, nah, no one's topping Fry. And I know that he did a good job. I don't think they could top him exactly. And that's kind of where I stand on it. I really do appreciate them both for what they got going on. But
so do I. Yeah, I'm going to lean towards Dwight Fry. I think just the way he's able to turn off the craziness and just... He looked insane, dude. Those close-up shots, those medium close-ups of him in the original English Dracula, dude, he looks fucking crazy. Yeah, whereas this guy, I think it's almost too subtle. I think when we think of Renfield, the standard is Dwight Fry's performance. And I don't think anyone's been able to kind of recapture that insanity. Even this movie that was made the same exact year, it almost doesn't feel like Renfield. Like I said, the dude should have just they should have just combined Renfield and Dracula into one and made it like one dude and gotten rid of Renfield, because in this movie, even in the Spanish-speaking version, he outshines Dracula because of the cartoony performance, because Renfield is not cartoony. So, Dwight Fry's still better just because of what he is and just kind of the career that dude even has. And I said it in the last episode, he's going to pop up again very soon in one of the movies we're covering, Dwight Fry. So we'll be seeing him again very soon. And to go back to the kind of weak sauce Count Dracula in this version, you know what scene is affected the most by the kind of sad portrayal of Dracula? Can you guess what scene I'm going to mention? Now, I know you didn't watch this with subtitles, so it might be difficult for you to point it out. The scene plays out very different in the Spanish version. Can't think of it. It's one of my favorite scenes that I mentioned in our previous episode.
I'm not sure which one you're going to mention.
I'll tell you. So, the scene between Van Helsing and Dracula, when they confront
like the mirror.
Yes. No. When they confront each other and Dracula's trying to hypnotize him. And,
okay.
And Van Helsing shows how powerful he is, that he's not going to be taken over by Dracula. The original scene is fucking great. That scene, dude. Just the dialogue exchange, Van Helsing taking a step forward, and then you see it in his eyes that he's fighting it, takes a step back, and then lifts the cross and all that, and then Dracula's like, you'll be sorry for this, and then Lugosi dips and leaves. That scene was so effective in showing that one scene cements kind of the battle, even though we both agree that the ending was lackluster when he finally kills Dracula. But just that scene shows you that this is this is Van Helsing's antagonist. Dracula, the protagonist, the antagonist, the hero, the villain, who will forever be chasing Dracula, Van Helsing. Like, and that scene is kind of the seed and the birth of what we know from those two characters. Now, in the Spanish version, it's almost played up as a joke, dude.
It really is. And I said, I watched this and I couldn't tell what they were saying, so I had to figure out exactly what was going on, piece by piece. I almost missed that was what was going on in this version, because it's not the same at all. Like, it's almost like Van Helsing is, struggles really, really hard with trying to overcome what Dracula's, his hypnotist. And it's just so weird. Like,
he even tries to play a prank on him. He tries to trick him. It's so silly.
Yeah, it's super weird, man. I didn't like that at all.
He pretends that he's hypnotized, and then while Dracula's putting his hand, his cape above his eyes, he grabs the cross and hides it. And then when he lowers his cape, he shows him the cross. It's and they're even in a different area of the bedroom. Like, they move them and it doesn't look right. It's just, what a great scene to be butchered in this. I don't know if I think in a scene like that, it's the direction. It's the direction they were given.
Yeah, it had to have been.
Because it almost comes off like Van Helsing's trying to prank him. Like, haha, he thinks I'm hypnotized, but I'm not. Here's a cross. Whereas the English version, Van Helsing has to fight to get out, to snap out of it. Like, he's got to use his willpower to get out of it, show Dracula, to scare Dracula off, to intimidate Dracula and not be intimidated himself. There's no intimidation. Again, Count Dracula here is not intimidating. So this scene shows how weak the portrayal is of the character. Fucking super bummer. Is there anything else you noticed and really enjoyed that's a little different from the English version?
There's a little bit more fog. Anytime that Dracula comes out of his coffin, or there's just a lot more fog going on. But all around, I just feel like the Spanish version, it just kind of flows better. Like we said in the beginning, like the way they shot it, it just flows a lot nicer. This movie, I know that they added another 25, 30 minutes or whatever onto it, but it doesn't feel like it's near as long as the last one. Like it was just a smoother watch for some reason. And it also there was a lot of little loose ends that was left in the original Dracula film, like the English version. There's a part where specifically Renfield is lunging towards or crawling towards the nurse that was passed out on the ground. They kind of tie that little loose end up. You don't know what happens to the woman. You think something happens to the woman, but here, it shows exactly what he's doing. So that was appreciated. I know there's a couple of other spots. I can't remember them right off the top of my head, but I feel like this version does tie up a lot of things that was left unsaid in the last one. So that's appreciated.
Yeah. There's a couple of things that are different. You know what's one thing that's missing? I don't know if you noticed it or not, but that entire sequence when Dracula arrives in London and he kills that woman in the street with the basket and I think a flower.
Oh, yeah.
They completely remove that scene.
Gone, man.
Yeah, he just kind of and that's a good scene in the original.
It is iconic scene, man.
Very
that was one of the
atmospheric.
biggest things I was looking for
Yeah.
in that one. Like, I just like waiting for it and waiting for it. It's like, oh, it's gone. The opportunity is gone. Like, what the fuck?
He just shows up at the opera, like with his top hat. That's basically it. He goes there, he hypnotizes the woman that seats you and all that stuff. That's all the same, but it completely eliminates him killing that woman, which triggers like the cops to show up and police and people, and then he continues on to the opera. I wonder why that was eliminated, just because that introduces his massacre in London, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, and it starts off like as soon as he gets there, he kills somebody. Whereas this, he doesn't kill. The first victim he has in London is Lucy, and that's basically it. And that's where it ends.
Yep.
Some stuff's also darker. Did you notice that? Some scenes were just like for example, Renfield in the boat, in the hull or whatever, the bottom of the boat with Dracula's coffin or in the box.
Yeah.
It's so much darker with the rats crawling all over him and him talking to Master. It's in Spanish, obviously, but
Maestro.
That scene, it's all like the rats are crawling. That scene looks more atmospheric even than the original one.
You're right, man.
Just because of the rats and the darkness and them looking at him and. He's not making that like laugh. It's a little different in the way they decided to shoot that scene. But then to flip that, all of those great lighting shots of Dracula's eyes are completely gone in this movie. It's like these really poor Dutch angle shots of Dracula's eyes with no lighting, just regular schmegular lighting that I did not like. I hated. We're going to go into some more dislikes here, but I hate, and I don't like to use that word, but those shots, dude, of Dracula's eyes when compared to the shots of Bela Lugosi with the like Morticia lighting.
Yep. No comparison.
It's so bad.
Yep. They destroyed it, unfortunately. It just was just lame.
You could tell they shot that like once and just kept reusing the same shot.
Oh yeah, it is for sure.
It's the 30s, so I'm gonna give them some credit. I'm not gonna get but nonetheless, it's like, guys, look at the original. Like, what were you thinking? Look at the original. Like, look at that shot and look at this shot. Like, there's just no vibe to it. There's zero vibes in the Spanish Dracula. Like, it looks all bloodshot eyes, wide eyed.
Yeah,
I just I did not like that.
And like I keep saying, like I can't understand what is being said the majority of the time, so it's very hard to like follow what's exactly happening in the Spanish version, but like you get most of it. And again, like I kind of understood what they were going for there after like the second time I seen the eye shot, and I was like, it's not near as good, it's not near as effective. It just feels like I wouldn't know he was trying to hypnotize. There's like not very many context clues there, and I feel like if the English version was in Spanish dubbed, like I would have understood that they were trying to hypnotize people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just again, it just rides on the performance, and I think that is what kind of kills any kind of scare factor in Dracula in this movie. It's just wild, man. Just thinking about it. Any other dislikes on your end?
Dislikes.
Dracula is my dislike. I just talked about he really, dude, honestly, that's probably the weakest thing for me in this. I really enjoy, I agree with you.
Yeah.
This runs a little smoother. And the scenes are long. Dude, every scene with Renfield and exposition between Dracula and them is longer. They extended dialogue scenes. That's really, and they cut some stuff out, but extended scenes in exposition. But for the most part, which you would think it would make the movie feel longer, it doesn't.
Yeah, it really don't.
It's so weird. So I agree with you in that statement. But yeah, anything else you didn't like?
Yeah, there's one really, really big dislike I have with this one. It's a beef I have for sure. There are no armadillos.
Yeah. I was wondering if you were going to mention that. They actually used rats in this one. What the
They
hell?
did, yeah, yeah. I was like, well, I can't even watch the rest of this movie. There's no fucking armadillos. No, I don't really have anything else I dislike about it. I think other than, like, you know, the little things that we said, Dracula being a little too over the top, comical and campy. I think I'm a horror comedy guy, so like I appreciate it in that aspect, but like if I'm gonna watch Dracula 1931, I'm gonna watch the English version. That's just it.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
To go back to the armadillos real quick. So, and I don't think we said this in the beginning of the episode, but and I think maybe that's why the armadillos weren't there. So this movie was shot at night.
Right.
So during the day, they'd shoot all the English version of Dracula. And then at night, they would shoot the Spanish version. So overnight, that crew would go and shoot it. So maybe the armadillos were like the daytime animal, and the rats were the night. They were the night. Yeah, because we said it too. We said why are they using armadillos and not rats? And if you notice, the Spanish version has rats in it.
Yeah.
But no armadillos. So they gave the armadillos the night off, basically.
Yeah, apparently. I don't know. Unless the Spaniards are just scared of armadillos and the English people are not. That was right. That was the reason they didn't use them. They thought rats would be too menacing and too scary for the audience.
Man, rats are way scarier than armadillos, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally.
So, but I can agree with you, dude. If I'm gonna watch a Dracula film, I'm watching the original Bela Lugosi one. That's the go-to. Even though this one has stronger performances, specifically with the main character that you're watching, the main titular character, the Dracula character, I think everyone else just is so good.
Yeah,
I just think the way they work off of each other is flawed, and I think that's why it moves faster. It's well acted. But once Dracula's presence is felt and he's on screen, it becomes fucking Daffy Duck Dracula. Like it's silly as hell.
Yeah, it is really weird.
Would you recommend this to somebody? Let's say you told someone, hey, if you've ever seen the American Dracula, or the English Dracula, I should say, they're both American technically, but the English production of Dracula, would you recommend that they watch the Spanish one, or you skip that one?
I would recommend it. I would recommend at least watching it once. You have to experience at least one time because it was kind of an eye opener. I'm not gonna lie. It was, and it's part of cinematic history. I think it's awesome. The history behind it, the idea that it was lost for so long, and just the whole idea that they shot both films back to back in the same place. They used all the same sets, probably all the same costumes and all that stuff, but different casts. And it's like you said in the beginning, it's like watching some other universe's version
Bizarro.
of the same film. Yeah, dude, it's
the Bizarro
super
version
cool.
of Dracula. Yeah,
I know that we kind of we griped on it a whole lot, but it's an interesting film. It's part of cinematic history, and I think if you are a Universal Monsters buff, I think you're interested in that, you shouldn't skip it. You should watch it at least one time.
Yeah, that's basically my closing thought. I think if you can line them both up, let's say you want a nice double feature, a nice 3 hours, let's say, of watching Dracula movies. I think watching them back to back makes the Bela Lugosi one stronger, but also adds certain things that the original lacked. And that thing, it's a good companion piece, I'd say.
That's a good point. Yeah, it completes
that's a kind of
little holes that were left in the plot. Yeah.
And I'd tell anyone, and I agree with you, I'd tell anyone, go out of your way. Again, not easy to find.
Yeah, it's on the 365th page of the Internet Archive, so good luck.
If you somehow can get your hands, maybe you own a physical copy of this, I'd highly recommend watching the Spanish version of Dracula after watching the English version they definitely do each other justice.
Yep. But you're going to quickly realize why, what's his name? Carlos. Carlos has never been on a Count Chocula box.
No, there is a reason. There is a reason why Count Chocula and him are not buddies.
Yeah.
Escúchelo. Son los hijos de la noche. Qué hermosa música componen.
So that was Dracula, the 1931 Spanish version. Grimey. Next up, we've got Frankenstein coming.
Oh,
a big one.
Can't wait.
Cannot
wait.
I know you can't wait for us to dive into that. Where can people find you, buddy?
Well, you can find us over at leftoverpizzaclub.com if you're interested in looking at our website. You can also listen to us on pretty much all the streaming platforms, Leftover Pizza Podcast. And you can also check us out on Instagram. I'm mostly involved in Instagram there, Leftover Pizza Podcast there as well.
And be sure to subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at Haunted Hangover. Head over to hauntedhangover.com to links to everything, including our Patreon page, which features bonus spooky content. Rate and review us if you're listening to the audio-only version of this episode. And remember, the best cure for a hangover is
more booze.
Catch you guys later.